These new line combinations suck.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1178 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers just narrowly edged at home 6-1 by the Buffalo Sabres. Game that really could have gone either way, and a game that I think proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the deserve to win-o-meter that you see kicking around on social media every now and then is the most useless piece of technology that has ever been invented. It had the Sabres as like 14% deserve to win in this game. And anybody that's watching, that watch this game, whether it's your first hockey game or you've been watching for 50 or 60 years, whatever it might be, can tell you that in no way possible the Rangers deserve to win this game. Not even in the slightest. But just a very disappointing performance. You could basically, we could come up with like a top 25 reasons why this game was terrible for the Rangers. I actually thought about maybe making that the episode, but that would have taken forever to put together. And I think probably the biggest reason, or one of the biggest reasons for me, is that the Rangers had a lengthy break here. They played on Sunday. They were off Monday. They were off Tuesday. They were off Wednesday. Nice and fresh. Let's get back at there. Let's get it done. Let's play the Sabres. Let's beat a team that we should beat in our building. And they did anything but that. As far as like overall individual performances, there's basically no positives to take out of this game. I thought Will Cooley was one of the only Rangers that looked like he actually wanted to be there and was actually working hard. You could maybe throw the third defense pairing in there, Zach Jones and Braden Schneider. They were not on the ice for any of the goals that were scored by the Sabres, and that's also kind of an indictment on the top four defensemen on this team. More on them in a little bit. Jimmy Vesey, I guess, had some blue-collar shifts, but for the most part, they're just terrible. This is terrible up and down. The Ranger fans were booing the team at the end of the second period, at the end of the game, and I'm usually not big on that, but it was well-deserved here. I cannot imagine being a Ranger fan and going to this game and throwing down my hard-earned money to sit anywhere in Madison Square Garden and being treated to this. The crowd was out of it the entire night, but who could possibly blame them? There was nothing good that happened. There were no positives. There was never a moment or a sequence in this game where it felt like the Rangers were going to get it going and that they were going to in any way even contend to win this game. And that leads me all into my biggest point that I want to make here on today's episode, and that is that these new line combinations absolutely, positively suck. I really didn't like the Rangers doing this in the first place, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago when these new line combinations were first being put on the table. They do it at practice, and you figure, okay, that's probably what they're going to go with in the game. I was as open-minded about it as I possibly could be, but I always felt like the timing of it was a little bit strange because, first of all, record-wise, you're off to a great start to the season. They're now, after this loss, 8-3-1. When they did the line changes, the line combination changes, they were 7-2-1, and they were coming off of a win against the Senators, a game that they won 2-1. Now, they weren't great in that game. Obviously, they only scored 2 goals, and if you look at that game combined with the previous 3 games before that, they had only scored a grand total of 8 goals. But the timing of it still just felt very odd to me because you've got a situation where the second line is absolutely buzzing. The Panarin line, one of the best lines in hockey last year, and off to a fantastic start this year as well. You've got the Hedl line, which had been playing very well as well, and they hadn't given up a goal against the entire season. And then you've got the fourth line, even them, they were giving you pretty much what you would look to get out of your fourth line. The first line was sputtering a little bit, but given the Rangers' record and given the fact that most of the lines were excelling, I'm looking at these line changes and I'm like, really? We're going to do this now? And then you had the first game after the line changes were implemented. That was against the Islanders on Sunday. And the Rangers won that game 5-2, and that's all well and good. And you might even look at that final score and think like, oh, I guess those line combinations really did work out. Well, not really. It's nice that they got the win. It's nice that they got the 2 points. But when you break down everything that happened in that game, there wasn't really a lot of offense being produced by the new line combinations. The Rangers scored 5 goals, but only one of them was scored by one of the top 3 lines at even strength. Besides that, there was a shorthanded goal there was a power play goal, the fourth line scored a goal, and there was an empty net goal. Other than that, there was just the one goal that was produced at 5v5 by one of the top three lines. So I just can't justify shuffling the lines when you have a formula that's been working just because you have one line, the Mika Zibanejad line, and possibly even more specifically, just one player, Mika Zibanejad himself, that's sputtering and can't seem to get anything going, can't seem to find his legs. I mean, you can narrow it down to just Mika Zibanejad, or you can include Mika and his two line mates, Chris Kreider and Riley Smith. That first line just wasn't producing the way that we expect them and need them to produce. And I saw a tweet on social media, and I forget who sent this out, but man, was this on the nose last night. Somebody sent out a tweet that said something like, Mika Zibanejad accomplished in this game, or is accomplishing in this game, what no other team in the NHL, no other opposing team has been able to accomplish. He is stopping Artemi Panarin and Alexis Lafreniere at 5v5. And I had a good laugh about that, but man, was that right on the nose, and certainly some truth to that, because that line was completely invisible in this game. And, here we are just 2 games into this like new era of line combinations for the New York Rangers, and they're already shuffling the deck. They go into the third period, and I mean, the Rangers have obviously been awful. The second period was a complete disaster. It will be right up there with one of the worst periods that the Rangers play all season. But you go into the third period now, and now you're already shuffling the deck again. For a while, you had Kreider and Trocheck and Lafreniere together, and then they went back to Cooley, Hedl, and Kakko. And hey, why was this line broken up in the first place? Just 3 young players all playing the best hockey that they've ever played in their NHL careers, shutting down the opposition, not allowing a single goal against the entire season. Yeah, we better break up that trio. But they were put back together by the end of this game. By then, obviously, it was too little, too late. But honestly, my vote would have been, if you're going to do this, if you're going to change the lines again in the middle of this game, then send a message by putting one of those top line players down on the fourth line. My vote would have been for Mika Zibanejad, but you could have done it with Kreider or Smith too. It's not like either of them played well in this game either. I mean, basically nobody on this team played well in this game, but put one of them down there on the fourth line, or just bench them all together for the fourth period, or for the third period. I don't think any of that actually happened. I don't think anybody lost any kind of significant ice time down the stretch in this game, but you end up by the end of this game with Kreider and Mika and Riley Smith all back together. This is, of course, the line that caused all these line changes to be necessary in the first place. So I don't know, man. And I want to talk about this too. I love Sam and Joe, awesome, best announcers in hockey, and I'm really going to miss Sam when this season is over. But they, during this game, a couple of times going into the game, and then even during the game, we're talking about how Mika Zibanejad had a really strong game against the Islanders. And on paper, 3 assists, hey, that looks like an awesome game, right? And I don't think he really played badly in that game, but the 3 assists make it sound better than it really was, because you got to remember, one of his assists was a secondary assist on an empty net goal by Panarin, and his other assist was a primary, but it came on the power play, and Panarin held onto the puck for a long time and then just shot the puck from the blue line. So really anybody could have picked up an assist on that play. It just so happened that Mika Zibanejad was the last one to touch it, touch the puck, that is. He did have an impressive assist early in that game. They had the shorthanded goal with Chris Kreider, the two of them, little give and go up the ice and scoring a goal. But nevertheless, I don't think Mika Zibanejad did anything special in that game. And like I said, this has been my point all along. I don't think the new line combinations against the Islanders, and obviously not in this game against the Sabres, did anything special either. My solution to this whole mess that the Rangers now find themselves in is very simple. You go back to the original lines. You go back to a lineup that saw the Panarin line excelling and looking like, once again, one of the best lines in the NHL. You go back to the Hedl line with Kakko and Cooley. Once again, a complete shutdown line, a line that works very hard, seem to really push each other, seem to really feed off of each other, and spends the entirety of its shift in the offensive zone, and still has not given up a goal against this season as a trio. I want that line back together. And obviously the fourth line is going to be the fourth line. I think it's very likely that it'll be Edstrom and Carrick and Vesey. Those seem like the 3 that the Rangers want to go with. Those are probably the 3 that they should go with. Even that line combination, and I know Vesey just got back, but for the most part, the fourth line for the Rangers has been very good this season. They're not going to produce offensive fireworks, but they're going to give you, some very honest blue-collar shifts that, involve good defense, good hitting, and a decent amount of time spent in the offensive zone. I'm not going to cater to the Mika Zibanejad line anymore. The bottom line, the other 9 forwards on this team had something figured out, and they were playing good hockey, and that top line wasn't. So it's on them now to figure it out and get going and pull their weight. My other solution to this whole thing, on top of just going back to the original lines, it's a very simple solution. I get the feeling a lot of you guys will be on board with this as well. your play dictates your ice time. You play well, you get more ice time. You play poorly, if you're just out there gliding around until your shift ends and somebody tells you it's time to come back to the bench, then you get less ice time. It's as simple as that. It's something that the Rangers, I think, have done a good job of doing over the last couple of years here, where, certainly under Peter Laviolette, better play gets you more ice time, and not so good play gets you less ice time. And it seemed like that's what was happening earlier this season. We saw the Heedle line starting to get, more ice time or close to the same amount of ice time as the Mika Zibanejad line. We had Mika not being happy about his reduced ice time. Well, if you're not happy about it, then it's time to do something about it. And I'm sorry, Mika, but you're going to have to figure it out with Kreider and Riley Smith, because with the way that the Panarin and Trocheck and Lafreniere line once again played last season and the way they were playing this season, I'm no longer interested in breaking those three up. Those three were put together for the first time ever last season. They hit the ground running. They never looked back. They have earned the right to maintain their status as one of the best lines in hockey. There's no reason that any one of those guys should lose the privilege to play with the other two, because they earned it together, and that's what the Mika Zibanejad line now has to do with Chris Kreider and Riley Smith. The three of them need to figure it out and get it going, and until that happens, if that doesn't happen, then they start to lose ice time to some of these other Ranger players that have played better and frankly look hungrier. So, yep, that's where things stand. Not a fan of the new lines. I can't imagine after watching that game that too many people are liking what they're seeing from the new Ranger line combinations. I think it's time to go back to what was working and what was resulting in the Rangers largely dominating most of their opponents thus far this season. So, got to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to, we got a lot else to do here. There's so much to talk about. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. But I want to talk about how this game was kind of a microcosm of all of the somewhat small Ranger issues, but when you add them all together, it becomes a big issue. You're going to see what I'm talking about in just a second. It's basically every bad habit that the Rangers have shown either this year or in previous seasons. They all reared their ugly head at the same time in this game. So we will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Hims. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their genetics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there is no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in a discreet package for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and improved safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even faster and even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Right now, Gametime is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Gametime app to purchase tickets and get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. You got Gametime Picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., all in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And for the everydayers, we're going to break down the Rangers' next game. They play Saturday against the Red Wings. And got to figure there's nowhere to go but up from here. I mean, you can't possibly play this bad 2 games in a row, especially with a demanding coach such as Peter Laviolette. And if we're being fair to the Rangers, and I can say one positive thing, is that they do generally respond well after they have a game like this. But this was about as bad of a game as we've seen them play probably in the history of this podcast. What is this, like our 5th season doing this? I mean, it was truly an atrocious showing by the Rangers against the Buffalo Sabres. And really, this game was the sum of all of its parts, and the parts were basically every bad habit that the Rangers have shown in flashes here and there over the last handful of seasons. For starters, let me just say, a lot of players on this team that have been drawing the ire of fans on social media and whatnot, and players that in general fans seem to be down on a little bit, they did nothing to help their cause in this game. The defensemen were just awful. Just so little resistance in this game, caught out of position multiple times. Ryan Lindgren has come under fire recently. I've defended him, but he was really bad in this game. He had a terrible turnover in the corner that led directly to a goal. We're going to break down everything that happened in the second period in just a little bit here. Miller and Trouba were ineffective. They were both -3s on this night. You know, Miller's like a yo-yo from one game to the next. He's up, he's down, he's good, he's bad. I never know which K'Andre Miller is going to show up on any given night. And every time you think that he's starting to turn the corner a little bit, he falls right back into, whatever this was last night, because he had a really rough showing. I don't think Adam Fox is any good in this game. It's funny, like Jacob Trouba, not that he was good in this game, not at all, but he's almost like getting a little bit of a reprieve right now, because there are so many other players on this team that are coming under fire from Ranger fans. Certainly Mika Zibanejad. I would say Chris Kreider too, to a little bit lesser extent, but certainly he's been, hearing it from fans as well. People are not happy with how Ryan Lindgren is done. And, maybe part of it is that Ryan Lindgren is still playing through this injury and he's got this giant fishbowl on his head. That might be part of it. But if that's the case, then he shouldn't be playing. It's freaking the start of November here. You have the whole rest of the season to figure things out. The Rangers are off to a good start. It's not like they're buried in the standings and they desperately need points right now. I mean, you always want to play with the idea that, okay, we have to win this game. But if we're really looking big picture here, the Rangers are off to a good start. Even after last night, 8-3-1, they don't need to rush Ryan Lindgren back into the lineup, especially when you have 2 seemingly capable defensemen that would be in the lineup every night in his absence, and guys that, mostly have played well. Zach Jones, I thought, was one of the few Rangers that actually looked somewhat decent in this game. And Victor Mancini, mixed results. There's a couple of rookie hiccups every now and then, but I think for the most part, he's been solid as well. You don't need Ryan Lindgren in the lineup, and he's been playing, and he clearly has not been anywhere near his best. And K'Andre Miller, I just mentioned him a second ago. We know he's become kind of a favorite target of Sean Avery on social media. Avery tends to go after Miller and Mika quite a bit, and, he certainly hasn't been alone there as far as, Ranger fandom and who their favorite targets are right now. But as far as, once again, this being a microcosm of the Rangers' bad start, I mean, that's one reason right there. A lot of the players that have been under fire from fans certainly played poorly in this game, but you had another bad start to this game. I'm not even going to call it a slow start anymore. Straight up, it's a bad start. You had a goal scored by the Buffalo Sabres. 26 seconds into this game, Dahlin shoots right through Igor Shesterkin. Not sure what happened there. There were all these rumors before the game that Igor Shesterkin and the Rangers might be close. Kevin Weeks, very reliable reporter, he sent out this kind of cryptic tweet. It had a picture of New York City, and it had $11.5 million and a question mark, as if he was wondering or maybe suggesting the idea that maybe that they're close. I mean, I don't know. It was kind of open to interpretation. Kevin Weeks likes to have fun on social media, and that's all good. But, yeah, this was, I don't know, man. If that offer was on the table from the Rangers, 8 years and $11.5 million, Igor should have run into the locker room the second that he got pulled out of the game and signed his name on it, because, a performance like this is certainly not going to help his cause. And it goes back to something that I was talking about earlier this season. Every good game that Igor plays, his price is going to go up, and every bad game that he plays, his price is going to go down. And this was certainly the latter. But yeah, I mean, obviously a bad start in this game. The goal just goes right through Igor Shesterkin. And, by the end of the first period, it was still only 1-0, but this was not a good period by the Rangers. Just low energy, not a lot of fight, no forecheck to speak of. Will Cooley got the first shot on goal for the Rangers in this game, and it wasn't until nearly 6 minutes into the contest. It was like 5:59 or something like that, and he finally put a shot on goal. Just not a whole lot happening, and another bad start by the Rangers. And this is one of those things, I guess the silver lining here is that this should be a wake-up call, that these bad starts are not acceptable and they're not sustainable. Yeah, it's nice earlier in the season. Rangers got off to a bad start here, a slow start there, and they eventually found their game, and they come back and they win. That's great. It's good that they show that resilience, and that it's good that they eventually get into their game, but you can't always do this. They didn't get away with it in this game against the Sabres. What's going to happen when you have a bad start in the playoffs against one of your Metro Division rivals? The Canes are on fire right now. You can't afford a bad start against them. If you do meet up with the Panthers again, you think you can afford a bad start against a team like that? Yeah, probably not. So that's something that needs to be corrected going forward. The Rangers need to find a way to start games faster. And to build on that, I'm starting every single game with the Hedl, Kakko, Cooley line. The line that, again, establishes a forecheck, constantly has possession of the puck, and doesn't allow any goal against. That'll very likely prevent the possibility of, your opponent scoring on its first shift, as the Sabres did here. And again, that one was on Igor Shesterkin far more than anybody else. But even still, give me my chances with the Hedl line starting games, the original Hedl line. Also, as far as, things that have kind of, piled up in a hurry here, scuffling power play. Another thing that has kind of been an issue recently, and it popped up here. The Rangers go 0 for 4 on the power play. The first power play, you got Adam Fox turning the puck over at the blue line, just kind of fumbling the puck and giving it away. The second power play, Panarin passes to Mika Zibanejad, and Mika just shanks his wrist shot. And I mean, how many times has that happened this season where Mika just fans on a shot or completely shanks it? The second period, you have the Rangers going on their third power play. Little bit better puck movement on this one, but it felt like a classic case of trying to pass the puck into the net, and that didn't work. And then, of course, their final power play came in the third period. This is a little better. This was right after the Cooley goal, which honestly, that Cooley goal followed by the next 5 or 6 minutes, that was the only time in this game where the Rangers actually seemed interested in playing hockey. They got a power play here. Again, it looked a little better, but honestly, I would say even for this one, the second unit probably looked better than the first unit. They at least got a couple of chances. Another problem that has been there off and on all season, and certainly seasons past, and you guys know where I'm going with this. It's something that I've talked about a lot on here. The bad shift in the aftermath of a goal. It happened all night, but it especially happened in the second period. The Sabres just have an absolute barrage on the Rangers. They do nothing to slow them down. We're going to talk about that in more detail later when we discuss the second period. And something else that's really creeped in, and it's something that I haven't talked about a whole lot, the Rangers are taking too many penalties. And one of the reasons why I haven't talked about it that much is because these undisciplined penalties, for the most part this season, pretty much the all part this season, have been covered up by the fact that they have an elite penalty kill unit. And again, that's great. You need to be good on special teams. If you have a bad, terrible penalty kill unit, you're not going to win the Stanley Cup. You're not getting through 4 rounds of the playoffs with a bad penalty kill unit. But my God, let's stop relying on the fact that we can just kill off any penalty that we take. There were a lot of penalties in this game that just didn't need to happen. Kreider with the boarding call in the neutral zone. Kakko with a holding call in the offensive zone. That one was not a good call, but still, it's an offensive zone penalty. Lindgren cross-checks his opponent behind the Ranger net because he can't keep up with him. And then Carrick takes a boarding penalty in the third period. I mean, the game was out of hand by that point, but these are still not good penalties to be taking. And it finally, bit them on the fourth one. The Sabres finally scored a power play goal on their last chance. So, yeah, I mean, and one more thing off the top of my head here, the inability to get the puck out of your own zone. That's been a problem, too. There were a lot of shifts that the Sabres had in this game that just felt like they went on forever. So, again, you have all these little things that kind of creep in every now and then, and it's like, well, we can overcome it because we have a good power play, or we can overcome it because we have a good PK, or we can overcome it because Panarin went off tonight and got us 4 points. But that's not going to be the case in every single game, and I think this is a reminder that the Rangers, hopefully it's a reminder for them that they need to do the little things better. So hopefully it's a wake-up call, and they can correct these things as soon as Saturday. We're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to finish out today's episode by talking in greater detail about just a disaster of a second period for the New York Rangers, and we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode by breaking down that just wonderful second period that the Rangers played. Just figured we could dive into these plays in greater details, and I'll offer my thoughts along the way here. And I should set the stage by mentioning that the first period was bad. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that. The Rangers just had no jump, no life. But like we were talking about earlier, they have survived bad starts so far this season and some other games. And it's only 1-0 at the end of the first period. You figure there's going to be a stern talking to in the locker room from Peter Laviolette and the coaching staff. If that did happen, it certainly did not seem to resonate because they were just atrocious in the second period here. And it all started with Cousins just ripping a shot past Igor Shesterkin out of nowhere, 2-0. This one was stoppable, but this was a very good shot. This one, to me, falls more on, again, two of the Ranger fans' favorite targets right now, Mika Zibanejad and K'Andre Miller. Miller's basically chasing this guy around the offensive zone, all the way to the top of the zone at the blue line there, and he's just kind of half-heartedly reaching out with his stick. He drops his own stick, and then Cousins goes around him, goes to the net, and ends up scoring. And while this is happening, while Cousins is at the top of the Ranger zone, you had Mika Zibanejad basically just doing a drive-by. I mean, I don't know what this was. He went over to kind of try to help Miller a little bit, but he just didn't do anything. Like, he kind of reached out with his stick and then circled back around, and just not much of an effort there from Mika Zibanejad. Ends up going up to 2-0 as a result. And then Thompson scores on the rush, makes it 3-0. This one, again, probably a save that Igor Shesterkin has got to come up with. But at this point, the floodgates were open. 30 seconds later, and this goes back to that other problem that we talked about earlier, the Rangers not doing good in the immediate aftermath of a goal being scored. Just 30 seconds later, Ryan Lindgren's got the puck in the corner in the Ranger zone. Jason Zucker just comes over, takes it right away from him, moves to the net, passes to the other side to Greenway. He scores from the doorstep, 4-0. And as I mentioned, Ryan Lindgren, and I like Ryan Lindgren. I think he's somebody that, the way things are going now, and when you look at the fact that this, in all likelihood, will be his final season as a Ranger, he's going to be up there as far as like underappreciated Rangers of this era, but there's no defending how he's been playing recently. He was terrible in this game, and it goes back to something I mentioned earlier in today's show, the very simple fact that he probably shouldn't be playing at all right now because you have two other defensemen that are more than capable of going in there for him and covering him while he's out, and Lindgren has still got that, fishbowl on his head, and playing through the broken jaw or whatever it was, at a certain point, common sense just has to take over. But I feel like at this point, the Rangers are almost afraid to reverse course because they already put Ryan Lindgren back in there. So if they take him out, it's kind of an indictment on him. And I guess maybe they would see it as like a slap in the face to Lindgren. But just get healthy, man, because Ryan Lindgren, even people that aren't necessarily presidents of his fan club, he's better than this. We've seen plenty of evidence to support that over the last few seasons. He's just not playing anywhere near good enough hockey right now, especially when you consider the fact that he's on the top pairing with Adam Fox. And a lot of people are upset about the defense pairings right now because they've gone back to Lindgren and Fox. They've gone back to Miller and Trouba. And then obviously that leaves you Schneider and for this night, Jones. There's a lot of different combinations they can go with right now as far as the deep pairings. We'll save that topic for the next episode because I want to see how everybody bounces back from this obviously just dreadful performance in the upcoming game against the Detroit Red Wings. After that game is over, let's see how things go. Let's see what defense pairings they use, and let's just take it from there. But for the time being, bottom line, Ryan Lindgren has been nowhere near good enough since he's come back into the lineup. And then less than 2 minutes after this, Sabres rush out of their zone, just go freely up the ice. They went right around Adam Edstrom. He was there. He couldn't slow them down. Jacob Trouba goes down to the ice to try to block the pass, and they pass right under him anyway, and 5-0. And mercifully, Igor Shesterkin is pulled from the game. Honestly, I feel like Igor should have been taken out the shift before this one, or rather the goal before this one that made it 4-0, because at that point, it was already pretty obvious. Okay, Igor Shesterkin 100% clearly does not have his A game in this one. And on top of that, sometimes a team just needs a kick in the you-know-what, and that would have given it to them. That would have been like, okay, this has gone on long enough, and, it's time to make a change here. And, you do the goalie change at that point. And 4-0, you don't like your chances, especially how the Rangers were playing in this game. 5-0, you're pretty much done. I mean, how many times in NHL history has a team come back from 5-0 down to win the game? So I didn't think it was going to happen here. I don't think any of you probably believe that it would happen here either. And, again, just a brutal showing by this team. I will say, this is as close as I've ever come as the host of this podcast to just turning the game off, to just not even watching the rest of the second period and all of the third period. I ended up deciding against that. I figured I would watch the rest just to see if there were any positives, if this team would show any sign of life. I mean, I guess part of it is like, I feel like I have to watch it because obviously I have this podcast. Part of it is like, well, you never know when something amazing can happen and a team will come back from 5-0. So that kind of keeps me into the game, I guess, a little bit. And, again, the thing that I also keep going back to is imagine spending money on this game. There might be some people, watching or listening to this that did exactly that. But, the fans there were obviously not happy. The second period, there were boos, and I think somewhat understandably so. Again, I'm not always the biggest fan of that, but I can't imagine throwing hard-earned money down to sit through this. And, obviously it was absolutely dreadful. So it's 5-0, and it ends up going to 6-0. Fortunately, the Sabres were offside, so that kept it at 5-0. But bottom line, this was just a disaster of a second period and just nowhere near good enough. And the silver lining here, as I mentioned earlier, is that the Rangers do tend to respond to bad performances like this. But honestly, the game against Detroit, obviously I want to see the Rangers win, and winning will always be first and foremost. But I don't want to see them win despite making the same kinds of mistakes that they made in this game, despite scuffling badly on the power play. And I'm not even talking about success rate on the power play. I'm just talking about, like, if they go 0 for 3 on the power play, but they beat Detroit 4-1, fine, I'll live with it. But I'm talking about, like, just bad showings on the power play. Power plays where you don't believe for a second that they're going to score. And that's what we've been seeing recently. I also don't want to see them get off to a bad start. I also don't want to see them taking unnecessary penalties. And I don't want to see bad shifts in the shift that immediately follows a goal. Those are the things I'm really going to be looking for. Obviously, winning is always first and foremost, but that's kind of my checklist going into this game against Detroit. So, like I said, nowhere to go but up from here. You got to figure by default it'll have to be a better showing than this one. But obviously, we're hoping for a complete 180 as far as, comparing it to what we saw on the ice in this game. One other little bit of news here that I want to throw out there is the Hartford Wolfpack has named a new captain. It is 27-year-old defenseman Casey Fitzgerald. He has played 63 career NHL games, and the alternate captains are Anton Bleed and Alex Belzio. We're going to talk about that in a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers as well, but I figure we can call it there for today. Once again, if you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.